medication emails that I want to get to. Some point.
I see that. All right, so we'll go ahead and call it over. Start with the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thanks everybody for the people that are here in person, and I'm sure there's a lot of people online that are watching to follow this as well. I don't necessarily anticipate any direct action necessary by the board, but I think it's important to continue to communicate and ask the question of our staff and so forth that has been diligently working. And again, thank them. I want to thank all of you guys that are sitting out here and everybody that's been here working on Sunday morning. I know I've been talking to the superintendent, and I think you started at 9 or 9:15 on Sunday working on a lot of this. And I know there's been a lot of adjustments. I think you guys have been here a lot of today trying to get us ready for other staff to be here. Hopefully tomorrow we'll see how this all works out. Much of this meeting then is communication. So it's for the cabinet, the superintendent and his cabinet to communicate to the school board and to some extent to the rest of the public what's going on. Just to make some people aware of kind of some adjustments that are made, because this is an emergency board meeting and it's under Minnesota statute, we aren't required to have video for all of us to be able to connect. So Jason Kindred is on the telephone, and Lori will be joining us here shortly. She's on her way. So just to make people aware of those accommodations being made for the emergency board meeting. Again, also it doesn't require the 3 days notice that we normally require to be able to hold this emergency board meeting for this type of situation where the governor has declared this state of peacetime emergency and all that, those types of things. So we are able to take the appropriate action necessary to deal with this emergency. Okay? With that, I think, Jeremy, I'll turn again this most over to you and allow you to introduce the appropriate people to give us the information.
Yeah, so we have been having a number of meetings, including yesterday, with our admin team, and some of that stuff went on Facebook yesterday, trying to answer questions. There's such a fluid situation all the way through this entire thing, and it's going to continue to be fluid. The stuff we're planning for today may not even be needed at some point, or maybe something that's sped up where we need to speed it up and things like that. Today what we did, we brought in the cabinet members, we brought in union representatives, and all the key people that we think that can kind of lead some of this charge and break some of these things down. We utilized the Minnesota Department of Education school closure guidance for public school districts and charter schools. And we're starting to break that information down based on the guidance from them. We'll have more meetings with MDE through the phone and things like that as we continue to progress. And because it's so new for everybody, there's lots of unknowns, but there's lots of stuff we can try to plan for, and hopefully they work out and we're able to continue the process. But the the school board, from a school board perspective, the policies are going to probably lag behind some of this stuff because it is so new. MSBA is watching things, and they're going to put out some guidance for us as well as they're able to. The biggest thing I've noticed is we could do things 3, 4, 5 times and try to send it out right away, and by the time we send it out, even within 20, 30 minutes, it sometimes changes. And I talked about that yesterday when we went on as well.
Well, and so before you leave that, I mean, I think we all have to be comfortable with understanding that we're going to have to bear through this with some flexibility in our policies. I mean, even talking about building access and those types of things, where we've limited access to one particular door, you have to fill out a form and take your temperature as you come in the door, all of those types of things are, administrative means we've put into place that we may not have a full policy to fully outline all of these things, but we're going to have to give the admin team and our staff that flexibility to do so. So just so everybody is acknowledging that.
Yeah. For today and tomorrow, our focus has been on making sure we're able to meet the needs of our workers that are emergency personnel, and trying to figure out what we can do to put plans in place so that they're able to continue to do their jobs. We had the cabinet in here today, and we didn't really even talk a lot about learning. We're going to focus on that next week when we get the opportunity to. And we're putting stuff together for that behind the scenes, but right now our focus has been putting care in place for people, trying to figure out how we can get meals to students, getting equipment or learning tools to students. When are we going to let them in the building? When are we going to have that type of checkout? What are they going to be able to take? Those type of things. And so we went through care for emergency workers, before and after care plan. All these things come directly from the school closure guidance. Meal plan in place, picking up of items, delivery options, what we can do with our transportation department, some of that staffing stuff, when are we having staff come in and what their responsibilities will be. Our communication plan, we've talked about some of the security, like we said, one entrance to each building will be open when we are open. Right now, all the buildings are closed except for this one. So that's part of it, making sure we're meeting the needs of special ed, 504, ELL students, mental health needs. All of those things were things that we've been working on today with the leaders that we have in the building, and attendance and what to do with assessment. And we've heard just recently, I believe one of the assessments has been canceled now. And they moved the ACT date, so people that were wondering about that, those are types of things. And they'll continue to move, they'll continue to be fluid like they have been. Right now, what I'd like to do is just bring up some of the people that did some of the plans so they can kind of give a little more detail or maybe answer questions that the board has for them. None of these are finalized. We had 2 hours to work on them today, and so they're really good plans for the time we had to focus on them. But there still are some questions that we have and some unknowns. But if I could have the child care for emergency families, Michelle Peacock worked on that. If she could come up and just kind of share an outline of that.
And I think that what you just said, though, is a very important point to emphasize, that everything we're talking about is what we know right now, and that we have to maintain some flexibility in all of these things to be able to plan, and people have to understand that things may change. I think it's important, as we're doing today and talked about, communicating and what we know so that the public gets that information, out to them. So, again, appreciated that, and Michelle.
Just to piggyback on that, we do ask the public for flexibility in that as well. We may send you something that, 2 hours later, we may change our stance, or the information we have is different, and so we may change it up entirely, and that has happened, and it will continue to happen with this since it's so much unknown.
We hope we have a good plan in place for the child care. We're going to be blasting information out to everybody in the district, hopefully by 4 o'clock this afternoon. We're setting it up for emergency workers, those that are listed on the list from the Minnesota Department of Health that need assistance with child care. We'll blast it out, have people register as if they're registering for a community ed class. We're hoping to get a good turnaround in 24 hours by 4 o'clock Tuesday afternoon. We'll hopefully have good numbers. So Paige can start working on his staff. Paige Kaler is our school age care coordinator. So hopefully he can get his staffing down at least close to how many we're going to need. It will be set up for online registration to tell us what days they need to come, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 4-year-olds to 12-year-olds only in our program. That's all we're set to have. There will be breakfast for those that are dropped off before 8:30. Lunch and snack will be provided as well. Transportation will be an option later. We aren't having transportation start until the 30th of March, until we can work with Tom and the transportation department to find out what kinds of needs there are, if there's any special needs, any preschoolers to find out exactly what we need. That piece will take a little bit longer. Care for these emergency workers will start on Wednesday of this week. So.
Great.
Any questions?
Any
And that's it
questions
in a
from the-
really tight nutshell.
Will older kids ever be an option? Or just because that's how camp is set up, it only goes to
That
12-year-olds?
was the governor's recommendation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, through fifth grade.
Yeah. I think though it is an important question, you know, that, I mean, much of what we're trying to address right now is what's been outlined in the governor's, you know, order and proclamation. And I think we fully understand that there's other people that might be outside of that might need some assistance. And right now, it's kind of a triage thing, right? It's taking care of the immediate needs for the immediate pieces that we've been outlined. And we'll continue to work down that as we get this more finalized for those pieces, then we can start moving on to the rest of the pieces.
As a second step to that, we are looking at, because the teachers are required to be here, potentially looking at a piece for any of the staff that has to be here, that's required to be here. We're looking at that, but that's a second option. We're working on the emergency care workers first.
Yeah.
How are we communicating out to those people?
Good
Or
question. We're going to email blast this out, we're going to put it on Facebook, and we'll put it on Twitter with the link to register attached to that.
So the email blast and the link, we are going to bombard people with a lot of communication this afternoon as we wrap some of this stuff up. And again, I just ask the public to please be flexible with us because things will change. I'm sure they'll change. I don't know what will change, but things will change, and we may have to resubmit some of those or resend those with updates. But the stuff we're sending we feel is very important, and if you just take the time to read through that, if it's at least relevant to you, in this case, the emergency workers, and be flexible with us as well. So, thank you.
Well, and, I mean, that's part of the thing too, is that sometimes what we may feel is over-communication is us just making sure that the right people get the information. I mean, I think whatever methods we can use, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or whatever. I think also people need to understand that, you know, those of us that have worked electronically for some time may not, may have different ways of working. I sit here with my phone in front of me so that I can see the comments that are coming in on Facebook. So it's not about being, you know, respectful or disrespectful, but it's a way to get the information and see what's happening. So I think people have to understand that. I mean, I thought about it even as I went to the convenience store today. Do I want to pay with cash, you know, and have to touch those additional things, or should I just pay with my debit card and be done with it? I mean, we're all going to have to make adjustments as we go through this. This is obviously, you know, new and novel things, and you know, we're doing the best we can. And that's why I'm going to continue to say, so Michelle, is people come in and you have to be patient with us, that we may not have handled your particular situation. And we may...
Case-by-case basis we'll look at, obviously, we'll have to look at those when they come to us.
Yeah.
We can't see the whole big picture at this point. We'll deal with them as we do all our community ed stuff on a case-by-case basis, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
All right, and the next topic we had is the pickup of instructional materials, meals. I don't know if Mr. Kraft, if you were part of that group, or pickup of items, if you could come up, kind of address that. This one is one that really is fluid. We've changed it a couple of times already.
So now you're making it low where the top version comes up. Oh, great.
Well, they can see that.
All right, so as we talked about the pickup of materials, worked with Jason Bowney and Joe Eichler, union co-presidents, so it was awesome to have them part of the conversation because it does require a lot of flexibility, as you talked about. So giving students the opportunity, families the opportunity, starting tomorrow afternoon. I think noon to 4 is what we designated as the time to come into the buildings to access the materials that need to go home. And you know, working on the phrasing of what that will sound like this afternoon, what you should pick up, and then providing an opportunity also on Wednesday, hopefully addressing the work schedules of people. Many people are working from home, but those that are still reporting to work, honoring when they are available to stop in with their kid to pick up the materials. And there's different variables where the pickup in my building in the high school looks different than pickup in the primary. And Dale Christensen mentioning, the point of contact where students and staff, seeing that teacher again, that's very valuable. So it's important to get your stuff, but it's important to see that trusted adult that you've developed a relationship with too. So again, designating a couple times Tuesday afternoon, and then Wednesday as well, starting in the morning, going into the evening, and working with the union leadership to provide some flexibility with the start times for the teaching staff, to have them present to assist with that, because picking up, like I said, in the first grade classroom is different than what you might need to pick up in the high school art room or your locker room.
Thanks. A couple of, it may or may not apply directly to you, but I see a couple of comments, kind of going through Facebook and stuff like that. I understand if the video is freezing and, everybody's trying to use internet right now, it's a lot of work from home and that kind of stuff. It's happening to me at home. There's a lot of people online. Okay, so that may be happening to some people. We keep recordings of that, and we'll make sure that the recording of the session is available on our website afterwards for people to watch. Okay, that was just one point, things I see. I don't know if you can answer this or if somebody else is going to plan to answer it, but the other comment I see or question I see is, are students going to have to make this time up? And I don't know if you can address that or if there's somebody else that's going to be addressing that.
No, I can address that at this point.
Yeah, because I think from my understanding is we don't know the answer to that the governor's order has given us the leeway to remove this time period, this next 2 weeks, from the requirements for student contact hours. But we need to make that decision locally and then and work through that with what you guys are doing, right?
Yeah, today wouldn't need to be made up. Tomorrow is one that we'd have to discuss. And then from Wednesday, the 18th until the 27th is not being made up. The commissioner has been given power, and the governor has given the opportunity to take those learning days away from all school calendars, public school calendars. And then going forward from that, it depends on what happens, I guess, after the 27th. Just like you said, the 30th, beginning of the 30th, ideally we were back in school, having normal school. Other option is we're offering distance learning, and we take that for as long as we need to, and I guess all the way up until the end of the year. And that's the second best option, I think, from that. Now, if distance learning is dropped for whatever reason from the governor or from the commissioner, and they say, no, we're going to just cancel school for this month or whatever, and we're going to take April off, no distance learning, no not anything, and we move that to June, that's their decision, potentially our decision based on school by school. But yeah, so right now, no, this next 2 weeks essentially doesn't have to be made up by students.
I guess my hope is not to come with a one-size-fits-all, but allow us the leeway to be able to make those decisions. And I think we're leaning heavily on you guys that are here to help us determine how we go forward. So there's a lot of TBD stuff there. Okay. Yeah, I look to you guys. Do you have any questions? I'm doing a lot of talking.
So materials pickup, you said it's tomorrow, or will start tomorrow, but I recalled Jeremy you saying that there is no school for the next 2 weeks, so I'm just kind of wanting to clarify how that's going to work and what's the requirement these next 2 weeks.
If they can come in to pick up stuff, they can pick it up to help them in the future, or
Okay.
if they just have their
But it's
tennis
not a
shoes
sign
here or
where they have
whatever it
to
is.
check in or...
No, we're going to try to leave it open, and so people can come in and grab their stuff. We don't want them here for very long. For as quick as they can grab it and get out the door. That's what we're hoping for, and then when the 30th rolls around, we want to be able to get students what they need.
There are students that have reached out on things like medications, so working with the nursing staff to make sure we're following the necessary protocols. Some students want to get into their lockers. We still want people to be healthy at home and get outside, and they might want to grab their baseball glove, their softball glove, so they can continue to, do fun activities, at home, so.
So it's not a
that-
materials pickup as in school work, it's more if they've left things in their lockers that they want to get, or...
But at our building, if your iPad is here, please do bring that home. You don't need to use it right now, but
Okay.
down there.
I was misunderstanding that.
So again, what I hear you saying though is we haven't set any time periods, maybe we're considering that, setting specific time periods for specific ranges of students, or, so that we don't, again, we're trying to reduce the amount of large gatherings and that kind of stuff, people here for a very short period of time. Are we planning that still, or has that been all set, or?
So, the group I met with, we did, have some recommendations for tomorrow, afternoon, and then, Wednesday during the day, and I don't know if you want to share
Well,
those times or not, Jeremy?
We'll communicate that out.
Yeah.
Again, things will change or may change, so.
Yeah, and
I
the
don't
reason
think
I'm
that's
asking,
now,
because it's on the Facebook as it comes through, is
Yeah.
asking that specific question. Again, the answer is, we don't know, we're working through a plan, and we'll communicate that as soon as we know more.
Yep, and like I said earlier, we may communicate it, and then tomorrow morning we might send it out at 4 o'clock today, and then tomorrow morning we might say, come in, you have 12 hours, the building's open, we're not doing anything on whatever the next day is.
Okay?
So we're gonna try to make it as flexible as possible, so we can get things, especially really important things like medication.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Another part of that was the food service plan. I don't know if Felicia is able to, she's here, so she can come on up and talk about food and who is eligible for food, what we have determined we're going to try to do here. Felicia Kiddock, Director of Food Services.
Yeah, so we'll be prepared starting on Wednesday to serve out of one of the doors here at the high school. We'll be prepared starting on Wednesday. We'll have like a 2-hour time frame, which we'll communicate out to families via email and social media as well. Probably 10:30 to 12:30. Any students, regardless of your eligibility, free, reduced, paid, come through. You'll have the meal brought up to you in a bag. It'll all be grab-and-go type items, but it'll be a lunch for that day and then a breakfast for the following day. So I've applied through MDE for a special programming. We'll basically be following the summer food service program guidelines, which technically, based on our free and reduced percentage, we don't qualify for, but because this is a special situation and we are trying to do more outreach to get to families that are free and reduced, then they should hopefully approve us for that. But regardless, starting on Wednesdays, we will have those meals prepared, and then that will kind of be the plan moving forward, and then working with Tom Reesley and Transportation to see how we can get maybe meals brought out to households as well, especially those that do qualify for free and reduced meals, because we know that they won't all be able to get into town to come and eat with us. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
And will you be tracking as they're being picked up, or meals being tracked?
We are going to be, yep, it'll be tracking.
Other questions?
Have anything else?
I think that is one of the key aspects of the governor's order, is talk about being able to provide food and provide for all students.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, we're obviously keeping that in mind, so I appreciate your work and your planning, so,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, we'll get there.
All right?
I'll have Tom Risley come up from Transportation next, but as you know, in a regular school year, transportation is one of the last things typically to get finalized, because it's one of those things that, so he's used to all this constant changing. We gotta add this route here, this stop here, this type of thing. And so transportation right now is kind of waiting in the wings, but I'll just have him kind of update the thought processes and some of the things that he's considering, and he does have a good staff, so and a decent number of people that are available. So once we finalize things and get able to figure out our transportation pieces, we'll at least have staff that we can mobilize to send out and get that stuff taken care of.
So, good afternoon. I kind of made notes into our Google Notes. We're looking at a start time of 3:30, 2020, if we wanted to start delivering. There's several pieces to that, because with our lives changing, along with, I'm assuming that a lot of these students' lives have changed as well, because they might have been picked up at daycare. Now that information might be changed because mom or dad might be actually telecommuting from home, so now that would switch. So a lot of our information that was current Friday has changed. So we need to fill those gaps on the running piece. That means touching base with every one of those forms. Plus, I know Felicia has a written document that has to be signed by every parent before we go ahead and start doing the food delivery or for a pickup. So we have to take care of that piece as well. Also, we discussed about the same time frame for our emergency parents with those students. If they need transportation to and from daycare here, that we would be able to provide that, but there's several steps that we have to take, because also their lives have changed, because the database that I currently have is, to me, I'm looking at it's invalid, because we need to validate every one of those, because every person's life has changed. It's flipped upside down in one aspect or another. So I just want to make sure that we have the correct information. The food piece is pretty easy. I think Felicia really tied that up. We're not going to have to go out twice a day. What we're doing is looking at like a 10:30, leaving from here. We would deliver that day's lunch and then the following day's breakfast. So we missed that one breakfast piece, but once we started that rotation, then that's basically that. We would end up bringing 2 meals out. So, and we're looking collaboratively, running like 2 drivers into a vehicle, so one driver's driving. And we could utilize the vans. It doesn't mean we have to use school buses. So we have quite a fleet of vans as well, and specialized buses. So I think we have quite an asset. So it's just trying to get that information as correct as that we can, and then we'll be fluid at that point. It's just, we want to make sure it's correct. Because I'm assuming right now that with my life has changed, talking with the other staff, of how we're going to be working this is parents as well.
And can you remind me, was there a blast that went out to the parents in the school district that reminds them to change their information if that's changed?
Yes,
that can be updated?
We do have a transportation form that's online on the transportation website, and it says right on the form, and the parent has to check that. So every parent that's filled one of those out says that that form's designed if there's a phone number change, if there's a home address change, if there's a daycare change, any type of change, even an email change, to let us know. And I want to be honest with you, a lot of parents don't fill that out. How we find out is through, if we're browsing on Skyward, or if we're actually talking to the parent, I'll verify that. That's usually a piece, but yes, there is a transportation form online.
Did you think that it might be a good idea to send out a phone blast reminding parents to possibly update that if it's changed? We send out phone blasts for other things that maybe a phone blast can go out for that
So when I have my
information.
secretary's report, all that'll be
It might be a good, it might be a good reminder,
Yes.
just for parents to know that.
Thank you.
Yes.
So the tricky part of that is phone blasted and it's the wrong number, then, but if you can just, I think people out there are communicating with each other, and so they need to say, we've been sending lots of stuff, and if you haven't gotten the stuff we've been sending, over the last week or so, you need to contact us.
And I think, this being live is also a good, point to that as well. I think people are seeing on Facebook, all possibly seeing this, and would be a good reminder as well.
Well, again, I just want to reiterate what I heard you say and make sure that that's correct. So everything that we've been sending out, phone blasts, emails, all of that kind of stuff, uses the information from Skyward.
Correct.
Okay? But your form and that stuff is separate from Skyward.
Yeah, in the transportation world, we use a database called VersaTrans, which is a separate entity altogether to Skyward. What happens if you tie those together, because when I was working in St. Cloud, we had it tied together, is a parent would change their home address, it would reroute that student without notifying transportation, throw that child on a bus that wasn't even making a stop there, and we might have 30 vehicles drive by that location, but we only have one dedicated vehicle to make that stop. And we wouldn't be notified, and there was no way to stop that internal process. So there's a script issue that's why those two databases are separate. And there's a lot of things that we look at, so I do work with the district office with Sheila quite a bit, because there are some things that we get updated that Skyward does not. So it's one of those, trying to figure that piece out. But yes, there are some issues, but usually when I'm talking to a parent, I like to confirm that, because I have the child's information up in front of me, and I'll just confirm the home address. The big one is a cell number, but if I'm already talking to them, I can confirm that internally, but then I like to confirm their email address as well, so.
Yeah, so again, I think it's critical, again, I know we're asking people for some flexibility, and I know it would be nice if everything was in the same system and everything, talked to it just is not the way that those things work. So if you have transportation needs, if those have changed, you need to go to the transportation part of the district website, get the form, and send that in, and I assume does it go to an email, or?
It's set up on a WUFU, so as soon as the parent basically fills out all the proper information, they hit submit, it goes to 2 locations. It goes automatically to my email inbox, and it also goes to Jody, my secretary. And usually we'll print those off, and then we deal with those as soon as they roll in.
Okay, so that happens automatically when they fill out the form that it emails?
Yeah, I see that ping through 24/7, so.
Okay.
Over the weekend, a lot of parents fill them out some night.
Okay. Other questions? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
We didn't talk a lot about instruction today, but the parts that we are talking about are things we'll continue to work on in the future, but making sure we're meeting needs of special populations, whether it's special ed, 504s, ELL, mental health, all of those things. I'll have Assistant Superintendent Minda Anderson come up and just kind of touch on each of those. Those aren't as far in the process, because we do have more time to plan for some of those over the next week and a half, but if you just want to kind of touch on each of those.
So our special ed director and our special ed coordinator are back at the co-op right now, really working through some plans to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to all of our special needs population of our students, and that's part of what Governor Walz really wanted us to do also. We also really appreciate having this 2 weeks so that we can really get our plans ready to be flexible. We know Becker's one of the schools that has a digital learning plan already, but that was meant for 1 day, a couple days, not more than that. And so it is going to look different, and giving teachers the grace to change some things and find out what's important, and this is going to look differently, and we're going to really work together on that. And so today and tomorrow we really wanted to do those important things like getting the food ready, and now we'll have time with our staff moving forward the next couple weeks, and for them to have time to change what they're going to do. So we'll be working on that.
I know we all know this, but we are part of a special ed cooperative that includes some other districts. And so that planning is it headed in Monticello?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's part of the Monticello School District. And so they're doing some of that work for us, and we have the appropriate people there at the table to talk through that.
Yes. So that's
Okay.
what they're working on, that plan. And so our regular ed teachers and our special ed teachers and all of us will work together to make sure that all of our kids have all of their needs met, and that we're meeting those 504 plans and those IEP plans, and really setting a plan, because it's not just for a day or two. This is going to be long-term, possibly.
Right.
So.
Okay. And while I have curriculum up here, I know some of the big pieces that people have questions about. Again, it's that school year, graduation. We don't really know how this is going to be affected.
We don't.
Okay.
We really appreciate everyone being flexible. We're going to do our best on the school end to make sure that we're still providing good instruction, but we're really going to need flexibility from everybody in this. And we don't know the answers right now. We have a lot more questions than answers.
Okay. And so saying some of that, I mean, we'll get the communication as much as we can. I know that there's people that are asking questions online right now and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we'll capture all of that, and I think the plan is to, basically keep a part of our webpage that we can, where these answers will be, and, continue to communicate that, make sure that people can see recordings, all of that kind of stuff, put as much information out as we know is firm, as of today.
And it changes so much. So this weekend, Jason Borgstrom spent a lot of his Saturdays putting together a great webpage, which none of it's really true anymore, so now we had to start over again. And so we're trying really hard to communicate all the information we can, but knowing it's changing so fast, we're having to go back and make new communications. And
a lot of those communications were, what do we do in large group situations and that kind of stuff, and how can we, and those are all gone now, yeah.
Well, and we know with special ed and IEPs and all of they're gonna have to be adjusted.
Right.
We're gonna have to figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay,
And still do what's best for the kids. So,
that's the goal.
yep, that was the goal.
Okay. Questions from the board? Thank you.
Do you want to touch on assessment too, a little bit?
Oh.
I don't know if Brian did that.
Want to?
This one is kind of out there. It wasn't high on our priority list, because we don't know what's going to happen. Right now, I think that the state is asking if we can still bring in kids for testing. We can do that.
For like MCA testing.
For MCA
You're talking
testing.
MCAs, yeah.
Yep. We also have the ACT dates have been moved, and I don't know if you know those off the top of your head, but, and then the access test has been canceled. But
Yeah, the goal for the testing that MD has been reporting on is that we still have to function in educating our kids. That's our priority right there in their health right now. So where possible, we'll have to look at the testing as a possibility when and if we come back in April, and then how are we going to get those kids here to do that. So our discussion today was centered around how will we transport them here, and of course talking with Tom too, we have to be very limited as to how many kids could even get on a bus at any time. Will the potential be there for parents to be transporting their kids in? Then how will we administer those tests when we do them? So we really do have to look at that, and MDE does not look at least at this time, in moving their dates for testing or extending it at all. So they're pretty rigid with that piece. So we'll have to kind of work with that, and as we were talking just when we started the meeting here, there's already some updates coming out already. So no sooner have we sat down and just talked about that already today, there's already some changes that are coming out now. Like for example, ACT, which we have scheduled to come up here shortly, the April 4th deadline for that particular test has now been moved to June 13th. So they're very well aware of their end of it, and they're making some accommodations and changes for that as well. I don't doubt that that's going to be something that we'll see from MDE, but we'll have to wait and see on that piece right now. So, questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you, both. This does involve early childhood as well. So we've got some stuff in place for early childhood. I don't know, Sue, if you want to come up and talk about that. But we are going to try to do what we can for the kids who are already in the building every day. And Sue can kind of touch on that as you speak in the mic.
Sure. My name's Sue Hiltner, and I'm the Early Childhood Coordinator. Becker has a history of strong support from families and the community for early childhood. And so we know there's a lot of questions by our parents already, parents of ECFE families, Small Wonders, and School Readiness Preschool. Our teachers will be coming to school, teachers and paras. We will make a plan to work with families, and we will do distance learning. Our children will not have iPads at home. They may have their own or with their family, and they may do some looking and exploring, but we'll be creative in ways for them to be involved in their home, with older siblings perhaps, or with parents. We know parents are the #1 teachers of children, and we'll give engaging ways for parents to be involved. They'll perhaps have other kids home as well, and some will be with grandparents or other guardians. So we'll be creative in working with our families, communicating ideas. There's a lot of support online right now by other early childhood coordinators and teachers sharing resources. So I think a lot of teachers throughout the state are going to share resources. We have not made any decisions on financial pieces of this because I know those questions are out there. Our families, most of them pay fees to participate. We'll try to work with families. That has not been determined yet at this point. We don't know how long this will last. Our hourly teachers are being supported. The governor has said that hourly staff in the district will continue to receive their wages, so our teachers and paras will, and we appreciate that support, but I'll send out information via Skyward to our families after Superintendent Schmidt does to the general public, and our teachers will communicate via Seesaw. We have accounts with all of our families, and we'll also take note of those that may not have internet access and try to plan programming as well. So does anyone have any questions for me at this time?
Anybody? No?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and as you can tell, and you guys knew this before I did, because I just came in July, but Becker Public Schools has a lot of really good things in place. We already have the one-to-one devices, which will help with this process. We have wonderful early childhood programming and things like that. We have our food service team has been really flexible. They had one of our better hits on the Facebook post with the hot tater tot hot dish. The number of different things, the technology that we have available, the training our staff has had because of that technology, the e-learning plan that we have has provided a lot of training for staff to be able to jump ahead and kind of be a leader in this category all the way through from preschool all the way up to 12th grade. It's an unfortunate event that's happened, and I think that we're going to do what's best moving forward, and we're going to continue to make changes, and we're going to run into some roadblocks and some barriers, and we're going to try to overcome those and make sure we're meeting the needs of every single student. So it's been great today, and we're just going to continue to get better our programming, and hopefully it becomes a seamless transition, when we get past March 27th.
Okay. Anything else, or anybody else that?
No, I think that's a bulk of what we had today. We talked about some other things like attendance and stuff like that with some of the assistant principals, but I think we're on that's essentially what we discussed today when we had our reconvening at noon here. Those were the bulk of the topics, and there's lots and lots more topics, and we're going to attack those as they come. But we do a call at 4:30 today with the Department of Education, and they're going to give us some more guidance on moving forward and some of this distance learning processes. I want to thank Jason for setting all this stuff up and getting people on, and the rest of you for coming in. So,
I think one of the things that I want to end with, being the chair of the board and appreciating all of the work that everybody's doing. Okay, so we know that there's a lot of kind of changes and everything that's coming through. We also know that it's very tempting, whether you're a teacher or other staff member and you've got the direct contact with patients, it's very tempting to try to answer everybody's question immediately. And fortunately or unfortunately, we understand that things are changing. The way we're doing things are changing. The communication and, the guidance you're coming from MDE, they're changing some of these things as well. So while things may have been set in stone and we knew how things were happening before now, things will have to change. And so hopefully people understand that even as they receive an answer from somebody, or somebody tries to answer a question of a parent or a student or other people, that may not be the right answer today. And so I ask people to be cautious about that, and try to make sure that you understand that may need to change or may have changed. And so even if you get an answer, I think it's important to communicate back directly to the school, to the admin, and allow us to, with that current information, to be able to provide that out to parents, students, and the rest of the staff. Okay? And so all of you guys here have very important roles in making sure that you make the correct decisions and communicate back to Jeremy and others to make sure that information is correct before we're broadcasting it to everybody. Hopefully that makes sense, and I think I see a lot of heads nodding and stuff like that along with me, so that we're getting the right information out there and we don't have to go back and correct it afterwards. So, all right. Other questions from the board, or?
Well, we just talked a lot, like Facebook and Twitter. I'm assuming the school website's going to have everything up to date. Will it have a place on there for questions?
We have a Q&A sheet that we've started. It's not public yet. We're trying to pre-plan the questions, I guess, and the answers, so there's answers already on there instead of just questions.
Yep.
So that is on there. We do have some stuff on the website, that we'll bring to the front, as we finalize those, or at least get them a little more presentable to people. But the main communication forms will be the blast out, via phone, email, and then on our website will be the other parts. And this is an ancillary type of communication method through Facebook and Twitter, but we've been putting everything out, multiple ways, and so hopefully that's able to get to everybody that needs the information.
So I think I hear the second part of your question. So I hear that us communicating out. How do parents, students, staff communicate to us if they have questions?
We're still working on that. One of the ideas we thought of is creating a general email, questions at ISD 726 or something like that, to get those in. We've talked about forms, and so we're still working on how to get those. As of right now,
so we're not putting that out as the way to do it yet?
No, we're still working on it. And yesterday I did give out my email address, but I'm really far behind on my emails for the last couple days. So that works. If you can wait till me to get back to you late at night, I guess.
Yeah.
But if it's an urgent thing, you can call the school and just keep calling different numbers, I guess, because not everyone was working today, but tomorrow we'll have more staff to be able to answer those type of questions.
Yeah. So what I would say is for the board, I mean, our emails are all on the board district website. Okay, so if you have communications or direct questions you can't get an answer any other way, go that direction, and the board will make sure that it gets back to the right people here. Okay. Again, I would urge us to try to not answer those questions, but let the staff, because they have the most current information, answer those pieces. Jason, I think we'll be working on a method to get communication from the parents. In the meantime, the best we can give right now is to, call us and leave a message, and we'll get to you as soon as we can.
Yeah, and a lot of my questions that have come up, I've redirected people to the right person, and that's a big part of it. But and if you guys can do the same thing, that would be helpful. And we'll do the same thing from the district office standpoint.
Okay. You good with that? Okay.
I think the main thing is to redirect those, if those questions are really dire, a question that needs to be answered, that calling one of us, we will direct it to the right person or get a hold of that correct entity or staff that can answer those questions.
Okay. No other questions from the board? Jason Kindred, I haven't heard anything from you. Just want to make sure that you don't have any questions either.
No, I'm fine. I really appreciate the good discussion. I can tell you, at work, we're going through the exact same discussions, probably even in more detail on how to run the plants and everything. So nothing I've heard conflicts with anything that I'm hearing from other sources. So I just appreciate all the work everybody's doing.
Okay. Anything else? We are adjourned.
Thank you.